I'm going to be, as it suggests, telling you guys, comparing basically two startup experiences. And in that, I think, hopefully pulling out some lessons about distribution, and particularly social media distribution. So the two startups I'm going to be talking about, let me just see by a show of hands, has anyone heard of Stitcher Radio? Okay, good. So there's some podcast listeners here. And anyone here have listened to or heard of AJ Plus? Oh, okay, good. Excellent. All right. Then I don't need to go too much into what they are. You're going to be learning about them. I feel like I'm in a good position to do this sort of analysis comparison because at some level close to both of these startups. I ran the business development team at Stitcher up through and after we sold it in 2014. And so I dealt with a lot of our content partners, people like APM, NPR, Fox, CBS, and a long tail of audio producers. Also dealt with our platform partners, so folks like Google and Apple, and also automotive companies, because we actually built the app into cars. That's where people listen. So I'm pretty close to the company, but I wasn't the founder. That was my boss, Noah Chinook. So I feel like I can be a little critical about where we went wrong. And AJ Plus, I actually don't work for AJ Plus. I work for Al Jazeera. I was hired essentially as an entrepreneur in residence to identify new growth opportunities for Al Jazeera in the United States. In doing so, though, I've learned a lot about AJ Plus because AJ Plus is by far the most interesting thing that Al Jazeera is doing, not just in the United States, but globally. So we're going to kind of compare them. They're very different kind of companies in some ways, but they have some things that make them comparable. They're both in San Francisco, both fairly new, and actually capitalized at about the same level. Okay, so they both have sort of quote unquote investors who put in about the same amount of money. And actually, in both cases, they're both in sets of investors didn't really know what the hell these companies were about. The way we're gonna walk through this is sort of if you guys have taken any cognitive science classes or are aware of some of these how cognitive science works, cognitive neuroscience, what they do is essentially they take people who have brain damage in some way, and use that to learn about how the standard normal brain works, right? Because it's really hard to understand how a brain works. Otherwise, they're super complex, and our technology isn't up to par with the biology. So one great example is face blindness. There are people who have face blindness. It may have gotten it through an accident. Some people are actually born with it, where they cannot recognize faces. And cognitive scientists have used people with face blindness to really dig in and understand how we do facial recognition, which is the super complex thing that our brain does. So I'm going to take the same methodology to help kind of explain how I think we can look at doing a media startup. So this is the standard model, right? This is how Silicon Valley tends to think about how you do a startup, which is, number one, you have an idea, okay? In the case of Stitcher, here's what the idea was. It's really compelling, actually. It's that we have these phones in our pockets, and these are audio machines. And people have headphones in their ears. And streaming radio is just not a great product when instead you could be choosing and listening to radio on demand, okay? And they said, mobile is huge. Let's build a product that helps people listen to spoken audio. Next thing you do in a Silicon Valley company, and this is where you get your seed money and maybe your A round, is you are searching for product market fit, right? You're a machine looking to find a connection between this product that you're building and somehow it really like connects with users, okay? And sometimes, once in a rare while, this thing just explodes, right? Like you find product, like Snapchat is kind of an example of that. And they had a couple other things going for them where just like it's so obvious, you know. In most cases, you kind of feel like you have product market fit. You're not 100% sure, but there are some indicators that you might have it. And the thing is, you're being bankrolled and you got to keep moving. So in our case, in Citra's case, we built product and had it out in the market. And what we found is that we had incredible retention numbers. Okay, so if we were able to get the product in the hand, this app in the hands of listeners, people totally stuck with it. And they listened, and that was super interesting. So at some point in 2012, we said, okay, product's good enough, now we scale, right? So now what you do, once you found product market fit in the standard model, is you throw money into it to bring audience to the product or bring customers to the product. And that's what we did. And you do this in several ways, right? A lot of people have touched upon like, how do you reach people in digital, right? So there's search is one way. There's actually not much of an SEO play when it comes to audio or mobile, really. And so that didn't really work. But there's all sorts of ways of spending money to get people to an app, right? You can actually just buy users using a variety of tools and advertising tools. We looked at, buying certain kinds of premium content, right? That's a way of attracting people to say like, hey, Mark Maron is only available on Stitcher. So if you want to listen to it, you gotta do that. The cool thing about being a really data-driven Silicon Valley company is we had a very clear idea about what our sort of CLV was, our customer lifetime value. We understood what total value that the average customer would bring to us over their lifetime of using us. And what's nice about having a CLV, and something that news publishers really should get a handle on, and most news publishers still don't think in those terms, is that you know what revenue you're going to bring in, so your cost has to be below that. And we actually found it pretty hard to keep that cost below. Mobile is hard. There are gamers in mobile, and games have really skewed the mobile app landscape in terms of increasing the price of user acquisition. The last thing is social. Social is a major driver of how you move people around on digital properties. Social traditionally has not worked for audio. Actually, audio is just like not really found that shareability. But we tried, and we actually built a social team, a social audio team that was like trying to hack this. So we were running on a whole bunch of avenues, trying to get this to work. And at the end of the day, it didn't really work. At the end of the day, we decided we needed to just sell the company, and we sold the company. And Citra's still actually a total going concern. It's great. It's still probably the second. I mean, our APM friends can tell us otherwise. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it's among the top distribution platforms for spoken audio after Apple. I left, and just as an aside, as Ara mentioned, I decided to pursue a kind of passion project, build a state house reporting venture in Sacramento, because state house reporting is something that's been seriously hit in the overall secular decline of newspapers. And I did that for a little while. That's up and running. You should check it out, CalMatters, if you live in California. It's kind of interesting. But was approached by a couple folks, to do something new, and had a couple offers in front of me, basically. And the one I decided to take was Al Jazeera. And essentially what it was is, as I mentioned, kind of an entrepreneur in residence gig where identify opportunities. And the Al Jazeera is kind of a strange company, to be honest. It's like, it's hard to explain it even. But I was attracted to it because of AJ Plus and because of what I saw in it. Because AJ Plus has attracted a really unique audience, number one, okay? The AJ Plus audience profile is something like this. It's about 52% people of color in the United States, around 24 years old, who are actually very civically engaged folks, okay? Some of the core hot button issues that get the AJ Plus audience interested and engaged are things like police shootings and police violence issues, environmental justice issues, so Standing Rock and Flint, Michigan, those kinds of things. Certainly things like the Muslim ban, and Donald Trump has been an interesting driver for what AJ Plus does. They have scale. So, a lot of scale numbers have been thrown around today, so I'll throw out some of AJ Plus's numbers. It's a 3-year-old operation. They're approaching 9 billion views on Facebook. They are consistently, month over month, in the top 3 to 5 news publishers on Facebook globally. So, the other people in that space are Now This, the Daily Mail nowadays. ABC actually does really well. CNN is sometimes there. But considering the size of this team, they bat way above their, their weight class or whatever. And they have an open future. Like they don't, and I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but like sort of the sky's the limit for them in a lot of ways because they're not linked to any kind of legacy. They're a completely new brand. So I went this way. And so I showed you guys the standard model of how a startup is done. I want to explain now, how did AJ Plus achieve this, okay? They achieved it by essentially not conceiving of a bottom of the funnel value point the way Stitcher did. Stitcher was like, we're going to provide a lot of value to our users by producing this app that makes it really easy to play videos. Instead, AJ Plus just said, we want to really, we just want to connect with our audience. That's it. No bigger goal than that. We just want to connect to our audience. And they built a team of video producers in San Francisco who are effective at doing that. Very effective, as I said. I gave you some of the numbers on what they're sort of capable of. And now that they have this scale that they have, we're now looking at what do you do with that? What do you do with that audience? And so now we're kind of ideating here for finding the sort of products down the funnel that will ultimately, produce greater value. And to understand like what value means here, I think ultimately the point of a news media company is to build trust with audience, to be an organization that helps people interpret the world, right? And that's where we want to be. We want to build trust with our audience. So why are they good at this? Number one, the content, and I'll give you we'll watch a quick video, but the content is super authentic. The people who produce these videos, and I welcome any of you who are in San Francisco to come to our offices. We're at the old Current TV offices right opposite Giants Stadium in San Francisco. The people who produce these videos are the audience. They are young people of color who are out in the field or in the studio, and they get it. They're able to be super experimental, and one of the they're experimental for a bunch of reasons. A lot of it is they have no legacy, right? Like they don't have to feed any beast. They don't have shows that week after week they have to produce for. If they don't like the way things are going, they can cut it and move to something else. And so they do experiment a lot, and they're able to very quickly try out the new platform trends, right? So they were very fast on Facebook Live, for example. And it's worked out for them. When they did a Facebook Live for election coverage, and they were hitting over 100,000 simultaneous uniques on a Facebook Live, which is that's getting into cable territory. Okay, it's pretty impressive. And they're also just really fast. And part of the thing that makes them really fast is that it's a super flat organization. There's basically no leadership in San Francisco. So the EPs make the decisions, and then they act on those decisions. Another piece on the experimental angle is actually that they're very close to product and technology and data science. So the data science teams, the product teams, the technology teams are highly integrated with the newsroom. One of the interesting things about this, and I think a key point of this, is that the folks at AJ Plus don't spend a lot of time thinking about, is this journalism? You know that question, is this journalism? They produce videos of things that are important to them, and they think are going to resonate with their audience. It ends up being actually, pretty meaningful stuff. There's not a ton of cat videos going up on AJ Plus. They actually take on pretty hard issues, but they don't think through that a lot, and it's what allows them to be, I think, as authentic as they are. Now, this all sounds really good. There's a lot of things that are very tough about AJ Plus. As David was talking about, user data is a huge problem when all your distribution is on Facebook. We have a very good aggregate picture of who our users are. We have no ability to actually track a user journey, right? And to harness the emotion that we know that they show on Facebook and to move that into, better education or, more insightful content, documentary, for example. But we're working on it. We're working on some own platform stuff and spending a lot of time actually looking at converting people off of Facebook. And how do you do that in a subtle way? Over-dependence on platforms. I mean, this is tying into, again, this Facebook thing. It does get tough to be truly experimental when so much of what you do is dependent on Facebook, right? In the case of AJ Plus. And another thing is it's limiting in terms of the sort of canvas. Right now, short videos really work on Facebook. AJ Plus has a docs team. The docs team has had a lot of trouble getting traction because documentary does not work on Facebook. So in this case, they're actually, what's really interesting about video, I know I'm over, just give me a quick sec, is that when I'm looking at the space, there is short video, there's YouTube and Facebook, and there's Netflix. And there's just nothing in between from a major distribution perspective. So we're actually just looking at building stuff and seeing what happens with VOD and set-top box stuff. And then this is the most important issue is that a lot of people see these videos. There's not a ton of brand loyalty and brand loyalty, essentially. I mean, a lot of you raised your hands that you were familiar with AJ Plus, but you guys are insiders. A lot of people watch these videos have no idea what AJ Plus is. But I think there are a lot of ways we can tackle that. So, one of the ways we're tackling it is I am building an audio team and really going to be taking on this question of how do I take these social video viewers and make them listeners? And how do I make content that is not NPR? No, offense to NPR-sounding content, but content that is, younger and more people of color oriented.
We get it.
That's it. Sorry for going over.
No, you're good. You're good. Very good. Very compelling content. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.